raw milk mini series. Let's jump right in. Let's make homemade whipped cream topping with that 1.5 cups approximately of cream that we skimmed from our raw Jersey milk. I chilled the bowl and I chilled the beater. I put the cream in the freezer for approximately 5 minutes. You don't have to, but you do want your bowl and your beater cold, chilled. So that would be for 1 cup. We'll do 1 extra. You can always go back and add more. And here's our moonshine vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon. You want to work pretty fast, but keep an eye on it so it doesn't turn into whipped butter. Drip it on your finger to see if that's to your liking. I'm going to add another tablespoon of confectionery sugar. One and a half cups of cream will give you approximately 3 cups of whipped cream. I like it a little bit stiffer. There's a very short window before this becomes butter. I don't want to push my luck, so there you have it, whipped cream. I will put this in my UV jar. The reason I do that, I have a commercial refrigerator with a clear glass door, and I do not like any of my dairy products exposed to any extra light. Homemade all natural whipped topping you could ever find in a store. Let's make some mousse 3 different ways. Before we get into that, I just wanted to show you the cacao process that I have. These are raw fermented cacao beans that I buy. This is cacao powder. I take the raw beans and I grind them in a heavy-duty grinder, and this is what you could use for cocoa powder or cacao powder in smoothies, baking. I do use this for baking, but today, not everyone has fresh ground cacao powder. I'm going to go with organic cacao powder that has been processed, and I will leave the link to that in the description, as well as raw fermented cacao beans. The difference in color you can see, this is raw, unroasted, and this cocoa powder was made with roasted cacao beans heated very high and then processed. So obviously the raw has more vitamins. I'm not going to get into the whole cacao story. I will leave links in the description. Our first mousse, some might call it just a glorified chocolate whipped topping. Call it what you want. So for this one, and you can double the recipe, is 1.5 cups of heavy cream. I'm going to whip this until it's slightly thickened and sort of frothy before I add 1/3 cup of 10x or confectionery sugar and 1/3 cup of cacao powder and a teaspoon of moonshine vanilla bean extract. Now we are on mousse number 2. This is a little different. This calls for 4 ounces. I use cacao, 60% chocolate, very rich, very good. Roughly around 2 tablespoons of 10x or confectionery sugar. I'm going to put 1.5 cups of heavy cream. I'm going to put it into my double boiler. I'm going to only put maybe 1/2 cup. I'm going to put this on the wood stove, melt this down, and then we're going to come back to melt the cacao chips and warm up the cream. Once this melts, you want to make sure you continually stir this. We are back with number 2, and now we're going to make the second part of number 2. We need to make a whipped cream. You don't want it rock hard, because then you're right back to where you started from. Fold it in. Now this is a little extra whipped topping. You could actually use 1/2 cup less cream, but the cacao beans are so strong, adding extra whipped topping makes it not so bitter. It's still light and fluffy and airy. It sounds like marshmallows. You don't want to whip the air out of it. It takes a few minutes, but it's worth it. For about a minute, let it bloom. This is filtered boiling water. We're going to give it a stir until it's all dissolved. You'll do the same exact procedure if you're using gelatin. All right, let's get ready to mix. We are back about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours later. It is late at night, and here are the three contestants. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. Number 1 was more or less a chocolate whip topping. Number 2 was when we melted down the cacao chips. And number 3 is when we added a thickener, cacao powder. These are the cacao powder from the roasted beans that I ground. I like to sprinkle them on top. This is also how I use my cacao powder. I add milk to it, or heavy milk, pour it over cereal, smoothies, ice cream, drink it raw. And out of the 3, I would say number 1 is my favorite, and number 2 is Raymond's favorite. Number 3 is more or less of a pudding type, not light, airy, and fluffy. I use this other times when I kind of want to make like a pudding mousse. But number 1 is so quick and easy. That's my fastest. I can make this under a few minutes. This one I have to melt down cacao chips. This one doesn't use cacao chips, but it used cacao powder. Flavor-wise and texture-wise, number 1 and 2 are almost identical. And I hope you like this series. Stay tuned for the next one. If you have made it this far, I want to personally thank you. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel today. Come join and be a part of our community. Hit the bell, then over to the right, hit the all notification bell. Thank you for stopping by.